Also this hour, why a judge is ordering all federal immigration agents to wear body cameras in the city of Chicago. And it's erupting again. We're going to show you more of the stunning eruption of Hawaii's Kilauea volcano that is soaring more than 100 stories into the sky. And we are at the midseason point in college football. We'll hear from CBS Sports' Adam Zucker about his predictions for this weekend's upcoming games. But let us begin here. In just a few hours, President Trump will sit down with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy at the White House. This comes one day after the president says he had an hours-long phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The president says he and Putin agreed to meet in Budapest in the coming weeks. The president was asked about the phone call yesterday in the Oval. Listen.
I thought it was a very good phone call. I thought very productive. But I'll be meeting with President Putin, and we'll make a determination. I would say within 2 weeks or so. Pretty quick.
Within 2 weeks. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand now joins us from the White House to talk about this. So let's begin with this meeting today with Zelenskyy. Natalie, what are we expecting?
Well, we're expecting the topic of advanced weapons systems, specifically long-range Tomahawk missiles, to come up. That is something that Zelenskyy has been pushing for, and he's really wasted no time during this latest trip to Washington, posting pictures on social media on X of Zelenskyy meeting with defense companies, including Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, as well as the U.S. Secretary of Energy, which is significant given Russia's latest strikes have really targeted Ukraine's energy infrastructure. And that topic is why this call yesterday with Russian President Putin is significant, because Putin was also speaking to President Trump on that topic. And President Trump has previously said or signaled that he's thinking about potentially sending Ukraine Tomahawk missiles. That, you know, back in a couple weeks ago, he said that Ukraine could potentially win back all of the territory that it's lost from Russia. Well, yesterday, when asked by reporters, he didn't give a clear answer on the question of Tomahawk missiles, and said that that's something that, you know, the U.S. needs as well, and that he didn't want a U.S. supply to get depleted. So we are going to be watching very closely and carefully to see if there's any decision made with respect to these advanced weapon systems.
And when the president met with Putin back in August, Natalie, he was pushing for a trilateral meeting between all three leaders. Is that still on the table?
He was also asked about that yesterday and said that given the terrible relationship between Putin and Zelenskyy, that perhaps it would be tough to get all of them together, and that they might have to have, quote, separate but equal meetings. We know that it's Zelenskyy who's been really pushing for these direct talks with Putin. That's something that obviously didn't happen in Alaska, and questions about what would be different this time around during a second meeting with Putin, this time in Hungary. President Trump believes that, or said that Alaska meeting set a stage, so we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, we were watching some footage from Ukraine, reporters speaking to Ukrainians who said they're really pessimistic about this latest meeting between President Trump and Ukraine's president, saying that patience is really running out.
All right, Natalie Brand for us at the White House. Natalie, thank you very much. For more on this, I want to bring in Nina Khrushcheva. She is a professor of international affairs at the New School, and she also happens to be the great-granddaughter of Nikita Khrushchev, the former premier of the Soviet Union. Always good to see you, Professor. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Let's talk about how significant this 2.5-hour phone call between President Trump and President Putin ahead of this meeting with Zelenskyy. How significant do you think it is? In your mind, the president, in his remarks yesterday in the Oval Office, said that he asked Putin if Putin would not mind if he sent some Tomahawk missiles into Ukraine. You know, we have to take the president at his word, but presumably that would be very bad news for Vladimir Putin if the president actually did that. But what do you make of this 2-hour phone call?
Well, let's start with the Tomahawks. I mean, clearly that's not a good thing for Russia. And Trump said that way. He said, well, Putin, sell Tomahawks to Ukraine, I'd love that. I mean, obviously, and the Russians have been warning that those advanced weapons would strain the relationship between kind of Russia and America even more, and certainly are not going to change the course of the war in Ukraine, which probably is true because only the limited amount can be sent, and so Russia would suffer more from what Ukraine has been doing successfully, is attacking its oil infrastructure all over Russia, but it really wouldn't change the course of war. The phone call is, of course, incredibly significant. First of all, once again, Trump pulled the rabbit out of the hat, is that when Ukraine thinks that he's finally getting to the Ukrainian side, Trump's like, no, wait, I'm actually not taking any sides. I'm on the side of Trump, and I'm going to see how it's going, how I can work this out. So this is a really good lesson, is that Trump is neither on the Russian side or on the Ukrainian side. He's being very transactional about it. So Ukrainian forces are bombing the Russian oil infrastructure. Trump is doing all he can to make sure that oil and gas is being not bought from Russia anymore, but from America. But at the same time, he tells the Russians, well, if you agree to my conditions, you're going to suffer less. So in some ways, he's a win-win right now, because it's sort of this very walking around diplomacy, but not taking any side and being not very ideological about it. It came as a shock to Vladimir Zelenskyy, as far as I understand. He didn't know it's going to happen. And all these 2 weeks are continuing to be essential, even if Trump doesn't take sides, be on the Russian side, because clearly Tomahawks are not going to happen in the next 2 weeks, maybe in the next month, because we don't know when that meeting will happen, if it does happen, in Budapest. And one last thing, Putin once again goes to the West. So all this pariah status that has been kind of signed to him, clearly by hook or by crook, the openings continue to be there. So Europe once again is playing a spectator in this kind of negotiation. So in this sense, Putin is a victor, although of course he is not, I don't think, in the long run.
So do you think then that Vladimir Putin is actually interested in discussing peace with Trump? Does he want an end to this, or in his mind, the only end is his ultimate goal, which was the goal that he had in mind when he launched this invasion in the first place?
I think he's not going to give in. I mean, in Alaska, it was clear, actually, there was a really interesting piece in FT about this and how Putin said, well, I have my conditions, and these conditions are not essentially negotiable. I think it's the same. It's going to be the same at Budapest. I think Trump is trying to see a way he can soften the Russian position. Russians think, or Putin thinks, he already softened it because he's willing to freeze the military fight on or where it's the kind of the lines that it is on now, except for the Donbas region, which Ukraine is not agreeing to. So he thinks he already did as much as he could. This whole idea that Putin he needs sanctions lifted, which he does, but he's going to agree to a lot of things. For that, he's not going to, because he already gave up very good or reasonable Russian economy to start a war, knowing that sanctions would bring it in, will become very problematic for the economy. So that's not going to push him. I think the only thing that can push him is the continuous good relationship with Trump, and somewhere there, the negotiation can have some movement. But I'm not optimistic about this. I really think that Putin by now has to present some victory, and he's not going to give up until there's some conditions when he can do it.
I know we got to go, Professor, but in 30 seconds or less, can you just tell me if when Vladimir Putin launched this invasion that he actually thought he could win? Because I'm just reminded, and I know it's not altogether similar, but when the Soviets launched the invasion of Afghanistan, they probably thought that that was going to be an easy victory. Did Putin think that this was going to be easy, or did he expect that it would drag on the way it has?
He totally thought it's going to be incredibly easy. And in fact, a lot of people in Putin's entourage at the time was saying how horrible this decision is and how it's going to be the new Afghanistan. And so far, their predictions, all these people who now on Putin's side completely at the time was shocked, and their predictions are proving correct.
Wow. Okay. Nina Khrushcheva, thank you as always, Professor, for spending some time with us. We appreciate your insight. Thank you.